You came here as children, keynote speaker Senator Wesley Ditko said. But you leave here as men and women. Mid-May was typically beautiful in the Philadelphia suburbs. But today, the sun beat down mercilessly on the 411 graduating seniors seated before the stage. Their suffering families sagged along open bleachers. Master Sergeant Charles Winter, U.S. Army, retired, gray-haired and bespectacled, sat ramrod straight on the top bleacher, watching the proceedings with a stony face that betrayed neither pride nor impatience. Mrs. Winter, resplendent in a bright yellow dress, moved incessantly, fanning herself with the graduation program. She shifted in her seat and whispered to her son. Sergeant Daniel Winter, U.S. Marine Corps, sat as straight as his father, but failed to replicate the man's stoicism. He beamed, proud and relieved. His kid sister actually was going to graduate after all. A plane in its hangar is safe, Senator Ditko said, and smiled down at the fidgeting seniors, pausing to make eye contact with the valedictorian, his daughter. But planes aren't meant to sit in hangars. Ladies and gentlemen, you are clear for takeoff. Spread your wings and fly. Principal Santana returned to the microphone, her face shining with perspiration, and began calling students on stage. Douglas Abbey stumbled coming up the stairs, but caught himself and gave the crowd a big grin before shaking the principal's hand and accepting his diploma. One by one, students crossed the stage. Whatever each had been, athlete or scholar, geek or dullard, stud or square, it was over now. He or she had run the gauntlet, surviving the 13 years of institutionalized insanity that constitute the American public school experience. Mrs. Winter fanned her face, which grew redder with each passing minute. Principal Santana called, "DeMarcus Winslow." Mrs. Winter tucked the makeshift fan into her purse and grabbed the hands of her husband and son. Here we go. This was it. After all these years, all these worries, troubles at school and problems with police, and endless emergency room visits in which nurses cooed over her pretty daughter, the girl with a wild streak, a daredevil who seemed to have broken every bone in her body. Her baby finally was graduating. Wild but sweet, her Scarlett, always sweet and loving, full of kindness. Mrs. Winter loved her husband and son, but they were cold and self-reliant, as her own father had been. Not Scarlett. Scarlett was her heart, her only warmth in the Winter household. The long suffering was finally over. At last, a new beginning. Principal Santana called, "Scarlett Winter." Mrs. Winter laughed and leaned forward, her vision blurry with tears of joy. There was a brief pause. From the student seating, choppy bursts of laughter rattled like sporadic gunfire. "Scarlett Winter?" Principal Santana repeated. No one stood. No one climbed the stairs. No one crossed the stage. More laughter rippled through the crowd, and for a frantic second, Mrs. Winter feared she might join in with a peal of hysterical laughter. Principal Santana cleared her throat. "Jeffrey Wood." A blonde-haired boy whooped loudly, charged up the stairs, and frisbeed his mortarboard into the applauding crowd. Mrs. Winter dropped her face into her hands and sobbed. Master Sergeant Winter, his mouth a grim slash across his sunburned face, stood and nodded to his son. Together they took Mrs. Winter's arms and helped her to her feet. If not overtly sympathetic, the men were inarguably gentle and protective. Fiercely so, even. As the family made its slow descent, people turned to watch with sympathy, amusement, or horror. Master Sergeant Winter stared straight ahead, betraying nothing. The eyes of the broad-shouldered Marine, however, burned with rage. Marching stiffly toward the parking lot, he growled, "Where the hell is Scarlett?"